Welcome to Heart on the Table, a tarot-inspired podcast for mothers, healers, and humans in the messy middle of becoming.
Two therapists, two moms, one card at a time.
Every other week, we pull a tarot or oracle card
and explore its symbolism through the lenses of trauma healing, attachment theory, motherhood, and intuitive wisdom.
Together, we weave our clinical therapy knowledge
with personal connections to motherhood, spirituality, magic, and womanhood,
reflecting on what it means to mother yourself and others
across timelines, triggers, and transformations.
I'm Bri Leavitt, licensed clinical social worker.
And I'm Myranda Peterson, licensed clinical social worker.
It's part sacred space,
part cozy couch chat.
Expect laughter, insight, and a whole lot of heart. Hey, okay, this is our first podcast episode for reals this time because we've tried to record this so many times, but everything that we've recorded has been great. Yes. Okay, I guess we can start with, why don't we just start with pulling a card?
Sure.
And that can be our intention.
Okay.
So we're pulling a card. We're setting an intention. We want to try and set intentions for each podcast episode. So we're going to pull a card and then give you guys the quick rundown on what that card means. And then I think it would be great to pull cards and just bring that intention into our topic of the day and kind of just freestyle it like we have been doing, and it's been working. Pulling a card. What's it going to be? The Queen of Wands. Okay. I just want to first look over the card. I see a woman sitting with a cat, and she's sitting on like a beautiful throne holding a sunflower, it looks like, and a wand. What do you notice?
I am noticing the piece behind her looks like a cloth. I don't know how you describe it. Something of importance that would be hung behind her, just to, I feel like it has to do with her importance. I also notice it looks like two lions carved on either side of her throne. There's also like a pendant in the middle of her, like holding together her robe. There's sunflowers as well, like on that drape in the back.
So we pulled the Queen of Wands, and we've both kind of described like what we uniquely see, which I always think it's interesting in recording so far, like the differences in what versus what I see, because there's like things on here that I would have not noticed. And I just find that fascinating, like the things that you notice versus myself. Do you want to start? What is the intention that we're bringing into the podcast based on the Queen of Wands?
Yeah. So I think what I was reading about the meaning, and just based off of what I saw on the card, just looking at it, is just that when I think of queens, like they are incredibly powerful and they have like the power to change the world. And in this card, it's like she's holding a staff and a sunflower, and in reading about the meaning, like the sunflower is supposed to represent that fire. And I think in terms of this podcast, this podcast has the ability to change our world and other people's worlds. It has the ability to, like a fire, like spread and keep people warm and let people know that they're not alone, and inviting a community to sit with us at this fire and to build that community or those relationships.
Yeah.
Around something such as like finding the meaning in the symbols, and like looking for the magic in everyday life. And it's there, like it's all around us and it's always there. Can you be open to seeing what's right in front of you?
It reminds me last night of our friend who talked about just putting something positive into the world that's just free. And I resonated with that too, because I think a big inspiration for this podcast, like along the things that you're saying, is just what happened to community. And I think that it's important right now, like in the crazy political times that we live in, for people to be able to find community that is, I think that we find community through consuming media right now. But I think our goal with this podcast too is to also make community like locally more of a tangible thing. So a book that I'm going to be pulling from a lot throughout this podcast is the book Tarot for Change by Jessica Dorr. I just really love this book. I was drawn to it because she's also a social worker, and I am a social worker. We haven't even said who we are yet. I'm Bri Leavitt.
I'm Myranda Peterson.
Yeah, we are both licensed clinical social workers. So when I saw someone wrote a book about tarot who has a similar background as myself, I was like, oh, count me in. Say less. Okay, and in her talking about the Queen of Wands, just to give a little bit of like her perspective, that's the word. She says, this is the Queen of Spirit and the energy that animates. And she says, she quotes Joseph Campbell a lot. A lot of people quote Joseph Campbell, to be fair. I think it's okay to read a paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm giving her all the credit. Jessica Dorr, all the credit for her fantastic book called Tarot for Change. She just says Joseph Campbell famously talks about the importance of having a sacred space and time where you don't know what's on the news, what your friends are doing, or what's on your to-do list that day, but rather you simply find a way to ground and make an opening for creativity. A lot of us don't have fireplaces in our homes or proper hearths, but it feels as though Campbell was suggesting we create something to serve that same function, a place where we protect and guard the flame of our creative spirit and come into conversation with the symbolic gods, whether our gods be things like personal values, moral or spiritual codes, or deities with the ability to influence our lives on earth. And then something I thought was interesting in her, like talking about the Queen of Wands, she kept referring to when you're building a campfire, you're building like it's slow and steady. You have to gather the materials. Like I had to go to Harmon's last night to grab my firewood, which I got for free. But she talks about you have to gather the materials, right? Like you have to work on starting the fire slowly with all of the pieces that you gather, and just the importance of recognizing the things in our life that are those slow burns. And I think it's so easy in modern times to want things now. And we've been working on getting this podcast together for
several weeks.
I think a month has passed.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think I was telling you earlier, I'm very impulsive. So I was like, I want to do this like now. But we were talking a few weeks ago about how this is like feeling like a slow burn and that feels good. And that I think that's the right way to go about this. So all that being said, I think what I'm really hoping to do with this podcast is, one, have a creative outlet, build community. I've enjoyed the past couple weeks just talking with you. I think we both think very similarly. And then voicing those ideas and giving voice to the things that you and I have been talking about, because I think we have good conversations.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if we can learn anything from our gathering last night, it was just that people are afraid to share their thoughts because of the fear of being rejected. But I think it's important that we create a space where we can do so and where others feel safe to be heard as well.
So last night, Myranda and I had at my house, we did a little therapist end of year like burn, where we got together, we all laughed and talked and everything. And then we wrote out like what we want to let go of on some paper. And then at the end of the night, we put it into the fire. We all read and shared to one another what it was that we wanted to let go of. And we put that into the fire and let it burn. And then I saged most of you. And then someone saged me, right? And then we did Palo Santo as well. But it was interesting to see how many people are afraid to share their voice. And I think even in starting this podcast, like I have wavered between feeling like, no, I have things to share. Like I think I have good ideas. And I've loved our conversations, and I think it would be fun to pull more people into those. And then wavering between, but who am I? Who am I to, everybody has, so many people have podcasts. So many people who are therapists have podcasts. I have to pull myself into the belief that we do have something to share, and we have the right to share our voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so powerful because you're right. The culture that we live in teaches us to like question who we are. I think a lot of people make it to the end of their lives not knowing who they are.
Yeah.
There are some things that were said last night that you mentioned to me this morning. You jot down in your notebook because you don't want to forget it. And it was simple but powerful.
Yes.
And I think like even the symbolism of the fire ritual last night, and the fire shows up in this card too. Like she's holding a sunflower, which represents the fire.
Oh my gosh, it does.
Fire.
That's funny.
Is so transformative. It can like completely burn away things that no longer serve us.
Yes.
While also giving like the fertilization for new soil. Like even when I think of volcanoes, for example, like how often do you think of a volcano?
Anxiety is super high. I think about Yellowstone erupting all of the time. No, on a normal day-to-day when I'm feeling pretty regulated, pretty okay, I do not think about volcanoes often.
Yeah, they're there. And
Yeah.
they're part of the landscape and they're part of this reality. And they have so much potential. And like we don't hear about them. I mean, occasionally we hear about them erupting, right? Like nothing so drastic as histories. But like that is like the earth's way of renewing itself, like renewing the soil. Like things can grow from destruction. Like things grow out of darkness. And I think that's incredibly powerful. We tend to forget that we're much like nature. We're much like landscape in that way. When we are stuck in a deep, dark place, like that is the potential to grow, to rise.
Yeah. And when you say we forget that we are much like nature, we are nature. And I think our modern world has disconnected us so much from that, that it's, man, how much time do we spend like scrolling on our phones, forgetting that we can just like step outside and like ground and be a part of it. You've read Johann Hari. He has a book called Lost Connection. And in that book, yes, he talks all about, he's not necessarily saying that a medical model isn't appropriate and functional and necessary for mental health, but he's talking a lot about how we have lost connection with nature. And that, I can't even remember, I think he interviews some woman who talks about the importance, like with her clients or with her recovery center or something, going out and like truly just dropping people like in a forest and letting them connect with the trees, and how powerful that can be for our mental health.
Yes. That's actually, I think that's actually prescribed to patients in, I think it's at Japan.
I think that's where he may have been interviewing her.
Forest bathing, I think it's called. To people who feel like they've been disconnected or lost.
Because in Japan, I think that's like an epidemic there. Yeah. Interesting.
I think that everything is a spectrum.
Yes.
There are two sides to everything and everything in between. And we were talking about this last night too. I pulled a tarot card last night and it was the Ace of Swords. Mm-hmm. And what I'm pulling at now is just that like the sword is double-sided, but there's also a lot of gray in between.
Yeah.
I think the medical model, like, yes, it has relevance and importance and like is applicable in certain situations. Mm-hmm. And also we have forgotten the other side to that is rooted in environment and rooted in connection with other people.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I hope for this podcast is that we can maybe lean a little bit more in that direction. If we can just move the needle a little bit farther in that direction, maybe we will have made a difference.
Yeah. And like just creating events. I love hosting events. I think it would be, I just think that like seeking things out where you can just go and be and just connect with people, it is hard. And I think if we can bring forth some of that for people to have that ability to find connection with others, like I would love to be able to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that's our like intention, which man, oh man, I feel like Queen of Wands actually went very well with what we are trying to do here, which is so interesting. I feel like the cards, I'm like, they're onto something most of the time, if not all the time.
I think it's just a matter of, are we receptive to it? Yes, exactly.
And what would I have if I just pulled this card like on my own, like a year ago? What would I have seen then? It's interesting. Okay, introducing who we are.
I'm Myranda Peterson. I am an LCSW. That's me. Just kidding.
I'm like, okay, there's more to you than that. Tell me, why did you choose social work?
I chose social work. I went into college not really knowing what I wanted to do. As a child, I had numerous instances in the hospital. So I thought that I was going to like find some kind of role in the hospital. Because they made such a difference in my life.
Sure.
I'm not really one for chemistry and biology, and those were like my hardest subjects in high school.
Yeah.
So I had that in the back of my head, but I went undeclared for, I think, at least a semester. And at the time, I was also in therapy myself. And I don't know why it didn't click sooner, but at some point, like, I believe I was sitting in the therapy chair and I thought to myself, like, this feels so natural and this feels so like me.
Yeah.
Sitting here talking with another person, like, this feels like what I want to do. And talking about, like, stuff that is so deep and meaningful, not just surface level conversation.
Absolutely.
I suck at that. I'm so bad at, what is it? Small talk. Same thing.
You don't even know the name of it.
Yeah.
I don't know her.
Not my scene. But like the deeper stuff, right? The stuff that nobody wants to talk about. The stuff that wasn't talked about, like, for me growing up. Like, and to have a space where it was safe enough to explore that. I wanted to be able to do that for other people. And I think that's part of what was so different about last night's gathering, because I was thinking about this and I was telling my husband on the way home after like 11:30 at night, a few days before, I think like the day before. And I had sat at a table, like, all on my own, because I got there early. And people, like, as they file in, tend to sit at tables on their own until someone has to eventually make the choice to sit down to another person. But in the setting like that, where it was very, like, formal almost, and, like, education, like, one person sat next to me, and that was fine. Like, we made small talk or small conversation, introducing who we were. And then another person sat down, and then another person sat down. And each time someone sat at the table, I got quieter and quieter. That was incredibly different last night at the therapist gathering, the fire ritual. As people came in, it was really easy to just get to know someone, and then we did introductions. You could just tell. I think I brought this up last night, which was also part of the training, but you can just tell when you walk into a room full of people who get you, or people who support you, versus when you walk into a room with people you're unsure about. And that's what last night felt like, was walking into a room of people who I just felt like I could be myself with. Show up genuinely and not carry the fear of what might they be thinking about me. And so that's really why I wanted to become a therapist, was to be able to give that to somebody else. Want to be able to give that to whoever is listening out there, whoever happens to find this and feels like they're a part of it too.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing. I love it. Okay. I am Bri Leavitt. I am also a licensed clinical social worker. My first name is Brianna, but I go by Bri. I'm also a mom. I guess I can share my coming into social work story too. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just experimenting. I always knew, I thought I wanted to be a teacher. And when I first started at Slick, I declared my major because I'm impulsive, like I was telling you. And I was like, this is it. Boy, did I change my major probably 6 times. I remember taking the, like, education class, and I had to go back to, I went back to my high school to teach a class with one of my favorite teachers. I hated it. I was like, first of all, I am 19. You guys are 17. Like, this, the power dynamic, it's not there yet. So they were just like, who's this girl trying to teach this class right now? I thought I was going to be an English major because I love writing. And then I took a sociology class at Slick. I did a little stint at the U because I was like, I want to go to, like, big girl school now. So I went to the U for a second. And then I ended up back at Slick. I took a sociology class. And I was like, this is, like, what I'm interested in. Like, social issues, how we interact with one another, and how that impacts people, right? And so I thought, I was like, a sociology major. And I think that's when I went to the U, and I took my first social work class. And I remember, I'll never forget the day that I was sitting in the hallway reading, like, my social work 1010 book. And I remember it in, like, the first chapter, it was like social workers. I don't know. It's making me emotional. I feel like I've just come so far since the beginning of my education. And now I'm sitting here in my, like, private practice office, and I'm really proud of myself. Like, it said social workers can go on to be, like, all sorts of different things. And one of them was a therapist. And I was like, that fits. That feels right. Being a therapist is what that is, like, calling to me. But I was like, there is no way. once I found out like you had to have a master's level education and all of that, I was like, there is no way I'll ever be able to get my master's degree. But like how I think why that fit is because I think I've always been passionate about social justice issues. I remember being in the 4th grade wearing a shirt that said vote. What 12-year-old is walking around with, she can't even vote yet. Like I was just so passionate always about social justice issues, just people. Like I've just always genuinely had a love for people. So when I saw a therapist, I was like, that would be the dream, truly. And then I was at the U. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to Slick. I'm going to finish all my generals because I think I have a few left. I'll go back there. I'll get my associates in social work. And then my counselor was like, if you plan on going to get your bachelor's, don't do an associate's here because it's a waste of time. She was like, finish your generals. You have 2 classes left. Get your general associates. Go to the U. So I did that. I went to the U. I did my bachelor's program. And even towards the end of my bachelor's program, I remember I still wanted to do the master's program, but I was just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. I don't know if I can afford it. There were just a lot of things that I was thinking about. I feel like the person who was my supervisor at the time at the recovery center that I was interning at really pushed me. Like, he was like, you should apply. Like, you would be silly not to apply for the master's program. Like, you would make a great therapist. So I did. I applied for the master's program and I got waitlisted. I was devastated. And the day before the orientation, I got my acceptance. And I was like, y'all, the day before, now I have to take off work because I also already had a full-time job. But yeah, then I went to the master's orientation and did my orientation as a therapist. And here I am today. Yep. And I love it.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I feel like there was so many valuable things. And I can see that as I know you today and hearing about your story of how you got here.
Yeah. I remember sitting in a class, they were talking about private practices. I told you this, but I remember just being like, that'll never be me. I'll never be able to have my own private practice like that. There's just no way. I feel like I've always sold myself a little bit short of what my capabilities truly are. So that's how we became to be social workers who are now excited to share with the rest of you. Do you want me to start the story of how the podcast came to be?
Sure.
So, how this podcast came to be. So, Myranda and I have always stayed in touch and stayed connected like through social media. We met in our bachelor's program. We were both doing the substance use disorder counseling program, and that's how we met. I remember vaguely turning to you in a class. It was dark. I don't know why it was dark in that classroom, but I turned to you and I was like, hey, can I get your number? Anyway, we lost touch, but have stayed connected through social media. And you have reached out to me numerous times about things like co-sleeping, breastfeeding. Yeah, I think some things like that.
Yeah.
Which I was always honored by. I was like, oh, apparently she thinks I'm a good resource for this stuff. So thank you.
Yes, you are.
But then you were getting started with your private practice and trying to network with some therapists. So we had a few coffee dates. And I think on our second coffee date.
Yeah, there was some time in between the first and the second.
Yes. I think only 2 weeks. Because you were like, we should make this a standing coffee date.
Then maybe we met one time before that. Because we met for coffee back in November. Because the first time I
You're
reached
right.
out to you in
I was pregnant.
September, October.
Yep, and I was pregnant when we met the first time at the place in West Jordan.
Yes.
Yep, so yeah, I forgot about that one. Mm-hmm. Yep, probably because I was pregnant and it's all a blur. So yes, we did meet at that coffee shop and shared and chatted and it was good. And then more recently decided we should get coffee again and we got coffee and then you asked me to make it a standing coffee date. And I was like, sure, I love that idea. But so it would have been the third time that we had coffee. I could just tell your energy was off.
Yeah.
Was I right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're very intuitive.
Thank you. I could tell. And so I had this card deck that I've been carrying around with me. And I was like, do you want me to just read your cards? Like, I feel like you could benefit from it. And she was like, sure. And how was that experience for you?
I think it was exactly what I needed when I needed it. We talked a little bit about our interests or our passion. When I've brought up tarot with other people, I'm like, do you know a lot about it? Mm-hmm. Or do you know anything about it? When you offered to read my cards, it was hands down, yes, please.
Yeah.
Do. That was very special to me.
Me too, because look at us now.
I know. Just to have someone see how impactful that would be and to offer that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't describe how much that meant to me and how big of a difference. Look at what's come from it.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. So this podcast started then because after I read her cards, she was like, we should start a podcast. And I have had so many people over the years say to me, we should start a podcast. And I've always been like, yeah, that would be fun. That's a fun idea. But when you said that, I literally felt the spark in me. I was like, we should. I feel like everything that we were connecting that day, right? Motherhood and therapisthood, being a caring person and an empathetic person, and then the cards. So we decided, let's start a podcast. And now here we are.
Yeah, it's been a huge learning curve, but has it been so exciting?
Yes.
I look forward to researching all of the things.
Me too.
And even when we've gotten together on the weekends and figured our way through all of this tech stuff.
Tech is not our strong suit. The camera just stopped recording, so we have half an episode filmed. It's fine. Yeah. I guess to say that these episodes will be recorded once I figure out how to make the camera not die halfway through recording. So we're getting there. It just needs to be plugged in.
This is very genuine.
It is very genuine.
Audience can tell that we are just showing up as we are, and we will figure it out as we go.
Yes, and we have already returned equipment that we've purchased that we decided was not a good fit. We have adjusted our microphones this episode because I think this is how this is supposed to be.
It's just comfortable.
Yes, it's so much more comfortable. It feels like it's not hanging in my face. And now if we can get it over the couch, that'd be great. It'd be way better. We're going to do that next time.
I think it's important. Yes, we've recorded this first episode several times. Not waiting until we get it perfect.
Exactly.
It's going to be our first episode. Hey.
Modeling.
Yeah.
Modeling is so important.
Yeah, and if whoever's listening can make it through this episode, maybe they'll giggle a little bit.
Maybe they won't.
Maybe they won't.
I don't know. Exactly. Yep. And I think I am a very relational therapist. And I very much believe in the importance of modeling. That is why I self-disclose when I feel in myself that it could be beneficial. And I usually ask consent. Can I share something with you about my life? I think modeling is important. And I really believe in that as a therapist because I just don't believe in having a power differential in the room. I think what people want, and another reason as to why this podcast is something that we're starting, is people want genuine connection in a society that feels so disconnecting and is so disconnecting.
Yeah, and I think so many people in so many different roles are gatekeepers of this knowledge that should be widely available to everybody. Why shouldn't anybody else know what you know?
Exactly. And I think a big thing that goes along with that is acknowledging the privilege that you and I both have to have been able to go and get the education that we got.
Absolutely.
And the book, Tarot for Change, Jessica Dorr, she talks a lot about that too because she was an editor for the books that are the therapist manual, treatment manuals is what she was an editor for. And she was all of this knowledge on how to be better and how to improve your mental health is locked behind a gate. It's locked behind it's a monetary gate. These books are expensive. She would talk about, I would be editing these books that cost hundreds of dollars that obviously only a therapist is going to buy a treatment manual that costs hundreds of dollars. I think there's lots of things out there like TikTok and Instagram where lots of therapists are trying to bring forth our knowledge, which I think is amazing. Bringing forth the knowledge that we have because we are privileged enough to have it, and why not share it?
I think for me, another part of being a therapist is just that I can make a difference in one person. And that one person can go make a difference in another person. It's spread like that. It can just have such an amazing ripple effect. And I think that's, even though it's on a smaller scale, it's not changing the world.
Yeah.
On a smaller scale, you can change the world.
Yes.
It just takes time gathering the resources, the materials.
It does. Yep.
Like with the fire, there is a process, and there is a process for a reason.
So another thing that I'm passionate about, particularly with my clients, and that I want to bring to the podcast, clearly there's a spirituality element here because our podcast is called Heart on the Table. We're going to be talking, like, we want to incorporate a card each time we record. But I think like pulling a card collectively for whoever's listening too could be like where we go from there. But I talk about, I think we're in Utah. So I think spirituality gets very like misconstrued with religiosity, if that makes sense, which both are welcome. But I consider myself more of a spiritual person. And I think when I say that I'm spiritual, people who have like religious trauma put their guard up a little bit on what does that mean? Because those words are so often used as if they mean the same thing, religious or spiritual. And for me, something that I don't even remember where I picked it up, but I know it passed down from one of my therapists or a therapist, just the idea that spirituality is just at its core, like finding connection to something. And I think I got that because I used to be big in addiction recovery, learning about AA and all of that. And I think the story that I can think of is like my husband. He was involved in AA. So he's been in recovery for, I think he either hit 9 years or a decade. I don't remember which one we just celebrated. I think it's been a decade. Yep. He just hit a decade of sobriety. But he talked about, because he's not religious, one of his like hang-ups with AA, he was getting hung up on like God. And he was like, I don't know what God is. Like, I'm having a hard time connecting to that piece in the group. And I think his therapist told him, why don't you just consider God the group of drunks when you go to AA? And my husband, that worked for him. He was like, okay, I can do that. And my husband is a very introverted person. So him being able to lean into that a little bit and lean into AA and lean into like connectedness with a group, I think was very important for him.
Yeah.
All of that to say that I think like that is what spirituality is. It is feeling connected to something, whether it's, I'm not even going to label. I just think it's what individually you find connection to, true connection, like walking into a room where you feel like you are supported, which that is what AA is. You are walking into a room of people who see you and who support you.
Yeah.
I want to bring that into the podcast. Collectively, we're just disconnected. And if spirituality is supposed to be the thing, like as I define it, like connectedness to something, that is something that I want people to be able to find.
I love the defining it. I love what you said about, I think that's a very real thing that happens when someone says, I'm a spiritual person, but someone may have had a religious trauma background. What does that mean for you? And it means something different to everybody.
Exactly.
I think that it's something that we lack in general as a cultural and a society. And I think that's because we think that we have to take it at face value. Everything these days is at face value, like surface level is what you get. But there's oftentimes so much more depth to it.
Yeah.
And I think figuring it out for yourself, what that means, is creating that fire. Once you know how to build the fire, you can keep it alive because you're the one who built it. And if it goes out, you know how to build it again. And I think that's maybe like the whole purpose of this journey that we call life. Like, in my opinion, right?
No, I would agree.
For what it means to me, I want to spend my life creating something for myself, for other people that stems from this connection. Once I figure out the way that works for me, whether or not I lose track or lose sight of this path, which happens, you'll start out on a journey and realize you've forgotten where you're going. You get lost again. But being lost, you can always be found. And if you know the way, like you can just take that first step forward.
Yeah.
That was another one of my cards last night. It said something about a lot of people don't want to take that first step unless they know what the end looks like.
Yes.
And you can't know that. You just have to take that
Right.
first step. It doesn't mean that you can change, like you can't change direction. at any time. But for me, just keep going. I watch a lot of Pixar and Disney movies these days with my little boy, and I just now thought of Dory. Just keep swimming.
Yep.
Just keep going, one step at a time.
And the end result that you create in your mind, it's never guaranteed.
No.
Nothing in life is guaranteed. And I think that's something that really people struggle with in getting started at all, because we're not guaranteed an end result. But it's like, even just taking one tiny step, you're going to learn something. Like, it's one tiny step closer to something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, too, along those lines, I have found these days that, like, cliches are so accurate for one reason or another. Like, they resonate with me these days more than they did when I was in my early 20s. Like, I feel like people are stuck, or they often find themselves stuck because they're so afraid of the end not looking like how they perceive, like how they want it to be.
Yes.
So that fear is very isolating and very immobilizing. Like, it's better to have loved than to have never loved at all. Like, it's better to take that first step and not end up where you think you're going to end up than to never move.
Yes. I love that. Oh my goodness. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I have left to say about, along with your, what did you say? You said something about, like, when we get lost, we have the chance of being found. What did you say exactly? I liked the way that you said it.
A lot of us find ourselves being lost or feeling lost, and you can't be found unless you're lost.
To pair that with, like, recovery, I've heard a lot of people, or I've heard somewhere, like, when we are entering in recovery, like, we're recovering something. And I think that's an important part to remember about. I think we're all recovering from something, like, from life. I just don't think there's anybody on this planet who hasn't been through something. So when we're thinking about, like, we enter recovery, an important question always is, like, what are we recovering? Goes along with that.
I love that. What that makes me think of is just that you can come back to the same thing you thought you already knew, but you can come back at it with a different perspective. Like, I know the image that I'm thinking of in my head is one of either a circle or one of a spiral. And if you look at the spiral from the side view, right, as it spirals upwards, it's moving up, right? It's rising. And from the top point of view, it just looks like it's going in a circle.
Yeah.
It's all about the perspective. You can come back to things you thought you knew or things you've learned before and have to relearn those things, but from a different perspective. Like, you're always going to be on that spiral. And you can come back to something you thought you already knew, but you can come back at it with a different perspective. And each time you relearn that thing, it becomes more, it's easier to remember.
Yeah. And so much of life and learning, I think, is about perspective. And whether or not I think with the cards, I tell my clients who I've been pulling cards with, because they get excited at the end when they're like, oh, and I'm like, you're resonating with this card for a reason, because I'm not here telling your future. I'm pulling these cards for you to connect with something within you and to connect to that intuitive wisdom. So some of my clients who feel stuck, right, or feel like they're really in the depth of pain or isolation, and they pull a card about, like, connection or acceptance or finding your belonging or, like, whatever, when they're like when that lands for them, and it always does, I'm like, that wouldn't be landing for you if that wasn't already within you.
Chills.
Yeah. But it's just like, we truly do have the power to change our mindset and to change our perspective. That does not mean it is easy. But I think the best example of that is, like, the cards with my clients, or even when we do, like, imaginary stuff. I'm like, I always tell people, because I am also anxious, like, the imagination is powerful, because think about your anxiety.
Yeah.
Think about me thinking about volcanoes exploding when I'm like, oh my God, is, like, the big one gonna, or, like, the earthquake here in Utah that we're always, but when my imagination is imagining that happening, I am very activated in my body. That is the power of the imagination. And if we can, like, remember that and use that to our benefit, that can help in changing our perspective. But it is hard when our brain is so programmed to go one other way.
I agree.
I know. It happens. I do that with clients sometimes where I'm like, hold on.
One sec. Oh, I like what you said about it wouldn't resonate with you if it wasn't already in you, like within you.
Yes.
And I think that's so important in today's world and what therapy has to offer and why it's like, it's not, I wouldn't say therapy is popular, but I feel like there's more of a desire for therapy.
An openness to it.
Yes, because the world out there wants you to buy this thing or endorse in this product because you need it. And I noticed that a lot with myself as an early postpartum mom a few years ago. I needed this to help me get through this big change in my life. And what I've come to realize and what I have always known is that everything I needed was right inside me the whole time. Or I could find it in somebody else. Or I could go, that is why I reached out to you.
Connection.
Yes, that connection, that mirror, that I am lost or I don't know what to do, and the ability to show up and say, yes, you do.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Yeah, and that is capitalism. Selling us things that we think that we need, that we think will make us feel better, that only further leaves us feeling disconnected. When I do believe that everything we need, we do have. We have everything that we could possibly need today in the time that we live in. And yet so many people are struggling, which goes to show that it's not the outside things. It's not the things that we buy. It's not the external that can make us whole. It is connection. Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention with our podcast, so we're hoping to have guests. When we were talking earlier about, I think I said something about, I don't know anyone who hasn't overcome a challenge. We're like poking around at having some guests on the podcast to talk about stuff that they have overcome. And I'm really excited about that. Therapy is an investment. It's not always covered by insurance. It is often expensive. And people want to share their stories. So I think that using this podcast as a safe space for people to share their stories of the challenges that they have overcome, we want to create that. We want to create a safe space for people to be able to do that, for our listeners to be inspired by the stories that they hear and to feel that connection.
Yeah.
So we're excited to do that. And then I think it would be really fun with our guests to pull a card for them at the end of them sharing their story too.
So powerful.
Yep.
I think too, we also want to create some kind of in-person community for those who are local.
Yes.
And potentially even like an online community for those who aren't.
I love that.
If we grow to be that big. But
I love that.
I think there's so much potential that could be had in creating a space for people to show up for these symbolic practices.
Yes.
So much connection to be had.
I would love to host, like I was saying earlier, I love hosting. I love leading. I love, like last night we're at my house. I'm like, okay, we're going to go around in a circle and I'll share who we are.
But it was done in such a natural way. It felt, again, last night was incredible.
Being able so to amazing.
Participate in a gathering with a bunch of like-minded people.
It was so amazing. And that is the kind of stuff that we want to bring to the community.
Yes.
So we're hopeful to branch out and do some community events. So if that all sounds fun to you, or if you have interest, you should give us a follow on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is Heart on the Table Pod. Yes, Heart on the Table Pod. We're also on TikTok. We haven't posted anything yet. We're probably going to post things by the time that this is like out.
Pictures.
Yes.
I think it's Heart on the Table.
Okay, Heart on the Table Podcast.
I can check.
Yeah, check, and then we'll. Instagram is Heart on the Table Pod. TikTok is also Heart on the Table Pod. You can follow us there.
Give us a follow.
You can give us a follow. You can subscribe to our podcast.
Thank you for joining us.
Yep, thanks for listening. Thank you so much for joining us in today's conversation. We hope this space offered you a spark of meaning, a reminder of your own strength, or simply the comfort of knowing you're not alone in the messy middle of becoming.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to share it with a friend, subscribe, or leave us a review. It helps this little community grow.
You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Heart on the Table Pod, where we share more reflections, tarot pulls, and behind-the-scenes glimpses of the podcast.
Until next time, may you keep noticing the magic woven into your everyday life.
Please remember, while we are both licensed clinicians, this podcast is not therapy and does not create a therapeutic relationship. The conversations here are for educational and reflective purposes only. If you are seeking mental health support, we encourage you to connect with a licensed provider in your area. Thanks for listening.